Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Urban Renewal Agency West Salem Redevelopment Board. Today's September 4th, bright and early, 7:30 a.m. Let's go ahead and do roll call.
It's Samantha Ross. Jeremy Mackay. Morning. Here. John Adams here.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I am present.
Tom Brosier's excused. Zachary Fisher here. Douglas Meltzer, you're welcome. Ashley Morey here. Greg Sharp here.
Awesome. We get approval of agenda. Motion to approve. Move to approve. Okay. Second.
Second.
Any discussion? No? Just kidding. All in favor?
Aye.
Nice.
Aye.
And then we have the approval of the August 2nd minutes. Motion to approve. Second.
Second.
This is easy. Any discussion? No. No discussion. Okay, all in favor? Any public comment? No? Moving forward to action item. We have no action items for our September meeting, but we do have some discussion items, and we'll give it over to Tori.
Okay.
Yeah, for the city.
Everyone.
Oh, that's right. That was your cue. Yes, we do have another board member. We should have done this in roll call. But right. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Greg Sharp, I'm with Salem Electric. Actually, and he a few weeks ago and said, hey, you're doing this board, so.
Yeah, well, we are excited. Right. Okay, discussion items.
Yeah, all right, so at the last meeting, the group wanted to hear more from other people, like from the police department and city manager's office related to crime, resources, and walls cleaned up and going forward. So I want to thank Deborah, Deputy Chief, for being here to speak to the first item, and then Gretchen, thank you too for taking the time. Over to you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate being invited here. So I'm Debbie Aguilar. I'm the Deputy Chief over our Investigations Division. And so what that entails is our all of our detectives, but also our Community Action Unit. Those are officers that used to be on bikes downtown. Now they're on bikes all over the city, as well as our homeless services team, that works closely with Gretchen's SOS team on that campaign. So when I was asked to come here, I was told to talk about crime, safety, and homelessness, which are three huge topics. And I'm like, how am I going to do that? So what I thought was I would talk maybe just a little bit, and then if there are questions or there's more specific information you want me to talk about, I can. And Gretchen and I work really closely together, so some of what I might talk about might kind of bleed into what Gretchen's work involves. But I know when we talk about crime, I wanted to just mention our community violence reduction initiatives that although it's specific, a lot of it's specific to Northeast Salem, some of it is really does focus on West Salem, because when you look at, I don't know if anyone's been involved or has read the materials on the community violence reduction initiative. It's all on our website. We did a 15-year crime trend study last year, which showed that in the last 15 years, our violent crime trend is trending upwards. But I think it was about 43% within the last 15 years. So fairly significant rise. And then when we got that information, we hired some consultants to take a look at that crime trend study and really identify where is that crime occurring, who's committing the crimes, who's being victimized by the crimes. And we saw a couple of red hot pockets of where that crime, community violence crime was occurring. And one of those red hot pockets was in the Wallace area. Most of it is up in the Northeast Salem area, but a little bit of it is in the Wallace area, so it does affect you all here. So when we finished that analysis, we started to engage with the community in several community meetings. And we had 5, and that was really to get a lot of input from the community as far as what does the community have as far as resources for those individuals involved in violent crime. And with the thought being that the community or the criminal justice side, we're always going to be going, our focus is identify people who are engaged in that violent crime and hold them accountable. So we're always, we can go, we're fairly nimble. We've got a federal task force together working on identifying individuals and have successfully prosecuted federally several individuals involved. But really on the community engagement side, we're looking at, we can't just put everybody in jail. We're hoping that we can either deflect people who are involved or prevent that involvement from the beginning. And really that part is on the community. And so these community engagement conversations were really focused on what do we have in the community right now? What resources do we have that as law enforcement will identify someone who's involved? How can I get that person out of that system? So right now we're at the very end stages of that. So we've had 5 meetings. Ben McBride, who is a consultant we hired to host and help lead those meetings, is going to produce a report for us. That report's going to tell us what do we have in the community, what do we need in the community, what gaps are there, and then give us kind of like a roadmap of where do we go from here. November 18th, there's going to be a joint county city work session that's going to present the information that Ben came up with, so everyone will be able to hear what it is that as a community we're going to be able to do in the future for this. As well as I believe there's going to be some information on the county also conducted a gun violence problem analysis. And so I can give you a sneak peek and tell you that Salem really was, when you talk about hubs of violence, it's Salem, and then Woodburn, it's another red hot zone for them as well. So there wasn't really a whole lot of information that was brand new. It was a lot of what we already know, but that work session I think will give us a good chance for the city councilors and the county commissioners to hear about both of those analysis, and then how do we as a community together, both city and county, move forward. But I mention that because it will somewhat hopefully positively impact your part of the area. Because we did see in our gun violence problem analysis that the homeless community has been victimized by violence. And so we really want to make sure that vulnerable population that we're really focusing on is victimizing those individuals. As far as kind of crime resources specific to some of the lower level crimes. So gun violence obviously is a huge concern, but it doesn't often affect a lot of people. Lower level crimes do though. So thefts, shoplifts, stolen vehicles, graffiti, some of the individuals maybe, although they're not crimes necessarily, you see some individuals on the side of the streets, maybe talking to themselves or yelling. People get really concerned about that. It's maybe not a crime, but we end up getting called. So we do have some potential programs that are going to be starting, I hope, that might help with some of those concerns. Number one is we received a grant from the state. It's for organized retail theft, but we're going to focus on retail theft and shoplifting with that grant. So it provides us with a lot of technology, but as well as some training and some overtime opportunities, some funding. So we're going to start focusing on retail theft. So a lot of the retail theft will be in the Marion County area, but there will also be some opportunities to come over to West Salem and try to identify those folks that are really the high level folks. So we're not talking about the people that steal a candy bar, but the people that are actually going in and stealing a large amount of products, taking it and then selling it online.
Question earlier.
Yeah.
There was I believe it was a storage unit that was raided in Marion County recently in regards to this specific topic? Is that what we're?
So that, actually, Marion County got a jump on us. That was Marion County Sheriff's Office that did that organized retail theft. That was a huge one. We probably won't find $500,000 in product in our state, maybe, maybe not. No, we have a whole year to do this, so we might. And there are some very prolific thieves out there, and generally they tend to steal, they take it back to somebody who purchased it from them for a lower amount, and then that person sells it online or does something else with it. So I'm hopeful that we'll have a couple good operations, but yeah, so they've actually been working organized retail theft for quite a while. So that was one. The other couple programs that I had heard about, but they aren't run through the police department, but I think potentially could have a very positive effect on West Salem as well as downtown. And I won't go into great detail because again, they aren't my projects, but I had a meeting with DJ Benson in Church the Park, and he has a wonderful idea to how to provide additional resources to individuals who are unsheltered, but also are suffering from persistent mental illness. So those are a lot of the individuals that we see downtown, again, talking to themselves. Maybe they're committing lower level crimes like property damage. And there aren't a lot of resources out to help those individuals. If they have persistent mental illness, a lot of times we have limited capacity to take them in to maybe the hospital for on a police officer hold, but generally they're released because they don't meet the state criteria. Jail is another option, but again, they're not receiving treatment out there, and it's generally lower level. So even if jail takes them, they're released fairly quickly. But DJ's plan is kind of a 4-level plan in different phases. The longest phase is to actually try to look for some additional sheltering capacity for some of these individuals that have some really intensive supports for the individuals. That's really long, way out in the distance. But some of the more shorter terms are providing some education for downtown business owners. And again, I can't speak for him, so it may expand to other businesses as well, on things like active listening skills and de-escalation, confrontation type of activities, so that business owners and individuals feel more empowered, and when they encounter an individual, they feel better able to manage the situation. And then they also, Church Park also runs a security, I think I'll call it security arm of their organization. So it is security, but it's security with a trauma-informed approach. So they're licensed by DPSST. The DPSST is our certification agency, state agency. They're licensed by them, but their approach isn't just to go up to a person and say, hey, you need to move along. It's to go up to the person and almost do field outreach with the individual and try to figure out, is there a way that they can solve that problem? Instead of having them move along, well, it's somebody else's problem, can they get them into some other type of program or convince them otherwise to move along to maybe a more positive destination instead of just going from place to place downtown. So those are just a few of their ideas that they have that believe they're seeking funding for right now. But that really, when we look at downtown or West Salem crime and the lower level crime, a lot of times what we are looking at is how do we, arresting them is an option. A lot of individuals, they don't maybe really care about getting arrested. It doesn't affect them as it would you or me. And so what else can we do to get them out of that lifestyle? So is it sheltering? Is it drug and alcohol treatment? We have options now for deflection, greater options for deflection for lower level possession crimes with the ballot measure 110 reform, which allows us a few more resources for deflection. So instead of sending people who are in possession of crime of drugs to jail, we can deflect them to Marion County or Fulton also has a lead program as well, to try to get them into addiction services, get them out of that cycle. So those are just a kind of a few of the things that I know you want to talk about homelessness, but I know Gretchen's here because she's the homeless guru, expert, or.
Lucky you. Trying to help on homeless. Go with that.
So I don't know if there are any specific questions related to that, or if there's any specific concerns
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
Now, you just mentioned that arresting these individuals seems to be less effective for them as it would be for you and I. Can you quickly describe that, why that is maybe?
Yeah, so for me specifically, I'm probably a bad example, but if I get arrested for a crime, I lose my job, lose my income. Some of these individuals maybe don't have those in place already, so they have a heavy addiction and they're not able to sustain solid employment. And so an arrest and a fine when you don't have maybe a job to lose or bills to pay, it isn't as effective. It isn't as an incentive as it would be for somebody who has, like I said, a house to lose, a job to lose, that kind of thing.
So the consequences essentially.
The consequences,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So we're saying at this point, an arrest for them is just basically a black mark on their record, and there's pretty much nothing else. And since they don't have anything else really going on, there's nothing to detract them from getting black marks on their record.
Yeah, and then it's not, I guess I'm generalizing, so I wouldn't be comfortable saying it's everybody. But there certainly are individuals, and you take an individual who maybe is unsheltered and an arrest maybe isn't as effective on them as maybe getting them into supportive housing. So they have a clean place to stay and a warm place to stay, and they have people there that can help them access addiction treatment or mental health services. That really we've seen can be successful versus taking them to jail. You give them a ticket because it's lower level, so they're not going to stay. You give them a ticket with a court date. They may not really, when they get out, be able to even keep track of when that court date is. So they miss the court date, they get an arrest warrant, they go back to jail. And again, it's this cycle. They may not have enough money to pay the fees, and it's a cycle it takes up the criminal justice system, but it's not really getting us to where we want to go, which is we want the person to stop stealing, and in order to do that, we need them to have a place to go. We need them to have a job or something that motivates them, I guess.
I hear you. Yeah, you're right. I think it does seem very ineffective at curbing unwanted behaviors and illegal behaviors, for sure.
Yeah, not that I'm against arresting, I am an advocate of there has to be some kind of consequence eventually. But I just don't think it's the only solution to the problem.
So what you're really tracking, if I heard you correctly, most intently is the violent crime, which it's encouraging in that regard, but what about those of us that do call in? Well, is it threatening a human?
Yeah.
No. We've had vandalism, we've had individuals sleeping on doorsteps, we've had subsequently locked up every garbage can, our charger systems, etc.
Yeah.
Because these roaming individuals are looking for anything and everything. And to call into the police department is, you're not threatened presently.
Yeah.
We are responding. And, the one encouraging piece is, not sure what the title is, code enforcement, whatever the enforcement individual that comes around and manages, kind of encourages people to move on, has been very responsive. But kind of seems like there's this dearth of what do we do, and I'm not hearing too many solutions. As much as, you know, just frustration that the amount of increase in that crime is tenfold from what we experienced 10 years ago.
Yeah, so definitely the violent crime is what we're talking about a lot because that is the more serious, obviously, you know, people are losing their lives. But like I said before, it doesn't affect a lot of people. What you're experiencing affects more people. I mean, I had my car broken into, I know people that had their cars stolen. So it affects more people. And it's, so our hope is to, you know, obviously we're going through some budget issues right now. But we like to look at the positive and maybe at the hopeful, which is that our staffing really is improving. We just hired 4 officers. We have another 8 potentially that we're gonna hire in October. So we may hire up to 20 new officers this year, which is really good for us. And so the hope is if we can get our officer numbers up, we really saw value in having a version of the downtown enforcement team back again. And it's not just downtown, we say downtown enforcement team, and it won't have that name because they're not necessarily totally enforcement focused, but it wouldn't just be downtown. I would see that it also coming down to West Salem, to that commercial area. But our hope is that we can get back to that we can have a team that focuses on all of Salem, because we have other areas, Lancaster and Sunnyview is another challenging area out there that really needs help. And there's a few others, but our hope is that if we can get our staffing to a point where we get our patrol solid, where we have solid numbers, that we can get back to having that kind of downtown enforcement team aspect, because I think that the more that we have us around, just making contacts with individuals, making those connections, being a presence, I think that would help. We're not quite there yet, just because we need to work on a few things internally, just with budget and staffing. But once we're there, I hope that we'll be at that point where we can have that, what we would consider a minor theft, instead of it's, well, we need to make an online report. It's okay, we can send somebody over to try to help triage that and figure out who did it, and you go down that
Yeah,
road.
really don't care about the who, it's just where do we put these people? Because the crimes specifically at that level are following the individuals that are moving around largely in RVs or living in cars, just really migrates
Yeah.
directly with that same source.
Yeah,
It's not threatening to our lives, but it's, you know, having your gas tank punched and having to spend $3,000 and not having a vehicle for 10
Yeah.
days is really inconvenient.
yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, which is where do you put the individuals, or what do you do, what's ultimate solution? Because it really is incredibly frustrating for us. Because we see the problem, so we go and we deal, maybe there's an area that's having increased issues, and we have a set of individuals maybe who are causing it, they move on, they're not moving on to a positive destination, they're moving on to a different part, and it's just like making the problem move around. So for us, our solution is trying to work with the other city staff and these nonprofits to try to figure out, instead of just moving them along, how do we actually solve the problem? It's incredibly frustrating. It's not fair that you have to deal with that.
Yeah, the fairness isn't really ultimate, but you know, somewhere along the line, it feels like we need a solution that we all can get behind. It really just felt like we changed names. That seems to be a politically correct mechanism. But the real solutions have to be, I don't know, you know, is it literally getting behavioral health specialists into the downtown sector? That may happen, and it might. I don't know what the solution really is. I don't think anybody at the present time has a strong optimism of the solution.
And there are challenges with individuals who have disabilities, maybe they don't. If we're talking specifically about homeless individuals, maybe you have an individual who has disability and isn't eligible to go into a shelter. Then what do you do with that individual? You have an individual who's just not interested in going into a shelter, maybe they have distrust of government or of institutions, so how do you do with that? Our mental health crisis is overwhelming when you have individuals who clearly are not fully functioning in society very well, but there's nothing that we can do, like we don't have a legal authority to take them off the street, give them help and make them get help. So the solution is going to be a multi-layer, multi-agency approach. It can't just be the city or the state, the county, nonprofits, business. I mean, it's going to take everybody because it's the problem is so many layers. We have the addiction of that. There's so many layers, but you're right.
Although this is a very important subject and I think everyone's frustrated and we've got the story. Gretchen, do you want to go ahead and move?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
My short agenda relates to cleanup at Wallace Marine Park, some of the issues that we're seeing and working with, solutions. Some work on solutions and then some successes as well. And I have a couple of reminders too, just in case of some resources that to make sure you're aware of. We're continuing to work out at Wallace Marine Park on a weekly basis. We continue to have people experiencing unsheltered homelessness there and committing crime and some of the lower level stuff and some of the more significant stuff. And so it certainly remains a priority for the city. We worked hard at the south end, kind of along the Taco Bell path, the berm area, which is really along the river, and then up surrounding the softball complex parking lot star area, all around that. And then there's just been a number of other places that we've grabbed and worked on concluding camping at, and then the teams worked hard at trying to maintain or kind of hold that perimeter so that we don't lose ground in areas that we've been at. We're also trying to just remove trash from abandoned areas or areas that had been burned out or, where there's just a lot of really significant piles of trash and garbage. And so we've been trying to get out there and pull all of that away because we're concerned about the impacts to the environment as well in that location. So we're being routinely there.
I have a quick question in regards
Of
to that. I
course.
think that's amazing is why is it that there is so much garbage? It is just mind blowing. You're driving by, my husband always comments under the bridge right there. If you're coming up to go over the Wallace Marine. Just, it gets cleaned up. They move out a week later, they're back in, and it's just, it's almost like it'd be effective if these areas that we know that the law enforcement knows, that nonprofits know, they're gonna, come back to set up dumpsters. And then,
That's a great point. I've experimented with some of that and sometimes it works and sometimes it backfires on me. We've had, for example, we placed some dumpsters in some locations and then partnered with street outreach to really emphasize the importance of using those dumpsters. If this is not acceptable, and it's also steps towards trying to demonstrate ability to come into housing for people who are motivated around wishing for a housing voucher. It's like, if you keep this area clean, that's kind of a step. And it works for some that are out there, and then others, what I'll never forget is one woman that called me and she was so mad. She's like, I had this place cleaned up last night and I went to bed and now it's all over the place. You have others that kind of go dumpster diving. And so we started to and then we had some issues with people climbing inside the dumpsters, and that can be concerning for the folks that do trash hauling. So we started to shift more towards coordinated. Here's the garbage bags, and this is the period of time. Now we're going to pick up, and then we're going to take it away immediately. That can be good, but it's also resource intensive with having the staff involved. I also experimented with a program with a couple of the nonprofits where people experiencing homelessness would turn in a bag of garbage in exchange for like a gift card to McDonald's or something that would be an incentive. And so we worked with that for a while and it had some moderate impact. It didn't work on everyone. I mean, I think one of the themes is it's a very diverse population out there. And there's some people who are lost in the behavioral health issues or
Or they're
in
just
criminality that,
drugs.
right, you're not gonna, but others have a motivation and competing. So I know it's just a massive issue. There's so many people just simply without trash service that are living a very disposable lifestyle and aren't necessarily tracking where all that garbage is going, or there's theft happening, and they leave a bunch of stuff out, so.
Well, it's just, I think just with the transparency, it's just nice knowing that these things have, for the public, these things have been tried. This is what it's working, that's what it's working.
Yeah,
Because for an individual like me that doesn't pay attention to, you know, what's going on in the garbage world.
yeah,
Hey, this is what we've tried.
yeah,
You know, just to let you know, but we are working. I think that transparency just speaks volumes.
of course, happy to always talk about it, and I'm always looking for new ideas too. That are fairly cost neutral, because I don't have money right now, but I'm looking for ideas. Salem Housing Authority currently has been doing great with handing out garbage bags and partnering with our team to remove that garbage. We're having some success with that right now in Wallace and a few other parts of town. Gosh, there's another thread on that.
And I just want to like clarify as a first, like, it's not about the garbage.
I know,
The garbage is just what the public
but it's awful.
sees and they get frustrated. There's so much more.
I know.
So I just want to clarify.
That's a great way to say that, it's true, and the garbage in and of itself is a problem. A couple of years ago, city council invested in a 4-person team to go around and remove garbage from public areas. And I actually thought, am I gonna be able to hire anybody? And surely we'd get it all cleaned up with 4 people working full-time, and I've been stunned at how underwater that team is. I'm thrilled that the same people are still in place over 2 years and all they do all day long is pick up garbage from unsheltered encampments. So those folks are my heroes because that is such nasty work. I've gone out with them a few times, but the remarkable thing, they're pulling an average of 23 tons per month off of our parks and sidewalks and public spaces. And yet I spend a lot of time on the phone with folks who were like, why is there so much garbage? XYZ location, and I'm like, I know, I hear you, like we're triaging, we're working on getting to it, I can't even, and we even hire contractors periodically, we can't keep up, it's a remarkable problem.
Just on the 23 tons per month.
Yeah.
Where's that from? What areas? Is that near?
That's city of Salem, that's city of Salem, that's going to include Marion and Polk County, but city specific and public specific. My other dream that I don't have the resources for is to help at private properties. I have so many impacted private property owners that are like, really, I have to pay to remove it. It's like, I really wish I could send a team down to help. And I want to thank Marion County. Marion County receives the Marion County waste from us at no charge, which is a huge gift to be able to dump the waste at no charge. So thanks to Marion County on that. Some of the issues are what you've all been touching on. An article a couple of years ago nationally came out that identified Oregon as ranking 50th in the country around mental health resources and services. There's a number of people who I think a long time ago received a pretty significant diagnosis and have been unable to meet their own activities of daily living or manage their own lives that maybe would have gone into services if their family was unable to support and take care of them. There would have been kind of a safety net. And I know I'm not seeing that for quite a few people that are just out there and they're not thriving, you know, and so that's definitely been an issue. We're also underbuilt in what I would describe as extremely affordable housing. So there seems to be an increasing percentage of people who only have the minimum social security. And it seems near impossible to locate housing on the minimum social security. So I feel really grateful for efforts like the United Way's cottage cluster strategy, because they're building units at a level that can be affordable for it. Because I've got folks in that space, so affordable housing is an issue that I'm discovering. And then just persistent substance use challenges and substance use disorders and stuff, that's just been dramatic and difficult to even carry on conversations with folks who've been having such severe substances for so long, and being able to get to behavior modification, to get to motivation when there's so much just brain damage, for lack of a better phrase. There's been some discussion about the impact of these drugs on the frontal lobe and what that's doing. So I think we're finding it difficult to carry on good conversations with people. And there's also just people like we had a guy recently that your team helped get into our navigation center. There's also just people that are having a hard time. He'd had an injury that led to reduced hours at work. The injury was persistent. He ended up leaving his job. That meant he lost his apartment. He's living in his car, super willing, just really not really with family and not clear on what to do. And he was super easy to help and support. It's like, we got, we can help with that, and so sometimes you just find people who are not really sure what to do next and have run out of people basically to have good advice from. So that happens too. Let's see. Another issue for us is pacing. We're not scaled to keep up with the challenges all over the place, and I would describe that scale problem just across the continuum. Like, there's 2 officers at the Salem Police Department who I'm so grateful for, and I remember life before them, that are dedicated to this effort, but I could probably keep 10 busy, so they're running around doing the best they can. The cleaning team, they're running around. And then I've got, I have a safe park program where people can park overnight and then access case management and take steps to move there, but that they're always full and on a wait list. We have very limited capacity at the Salem Hospital's inpatient psychiatric care. You talk with the staff, and some of them would love to keep the people there longer that are there, but they're releasing them out into the street because they don't have capacity. So there's a capacity challenge just across the whole continuum of all of the things you would imagine I need. I was talking with service providers the other day who were talking about it can take a month to get the substance use to drug treatment assessment into the program. And when they get someone who actually says, I'm ready to step out of this addiction, you really want to hop, but you can't always access that. The providers are talking about glitches in that system. So I've just got to scale. One of my issues is scaling across the board. I'm also trying to pace our work in particular areas, recognizing that. Like, if we made a decision to have an operation to completely conclude all the unsheltered camping at Wallace Marine Park and get it done in 4 weeks, for example, to just be like, we're done, this is unacceptable. We have a concern that due to the lack of the rest of the system being prepared, I'd end up flooding down Wallace and Edgewater and downtown, and you'd see an increase in new and different challenges because we move the problem around. So we're also trying to pace when and how we work to prevent and other ancillary impacts that we don't need to cause. So there's pacing and scale issues. We talked about solutions. We're part of a regional Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance that's working on a strategic plan. And they have a number of the solutions that are really just common sense lined out there. And they've been effective so far at attracting federal grant dollars into fund some of those things, like tackle youth homelessness, because I think it's over 65% of the people who are homeless in Salem had been homeless as a kiddo. And so if you could get in, tackle the youth and the young adults early, for example, you can help break that cycle and change the life and change the trajectory. So common sense things like that is part of the strategic plan. And that's a partnership with the city, Marion and Polk counties, and a number of the smaller cities in our region, trying to work on this as a regional issue. So like having Polk County's been working really hard at sheltering people in rural Polk County, instead of bringing them into West Salem and in Salem. Instead, if they're somebody from Dallas, let's shelter in Dallas instead, and that's helping Salem as well, to not be that kind of regional magnet. So that has a number of solutions that they're working on. Unrelated to that plan, but another example of a solution that's coming up is the, again, the folks at Salem Health and some other people have developed a secure residential treatment facility that's going to be opening in Marion County in the not too distant future, and then they're going to build a second one. And It's gonna have, I think the first one 35 spaces and then another one for 35 spaces. And that's for folks who aren't accessing Oregon State Hospital, but do have severe and persistent mental illness that have really not been doing well outside. And so they'd be able to come into this facility and have the kind of care and support they need. And we haven't had one of those. And so I think that's gonna be a great step forward as well. I'm grateful to the people who will be building that. I think we'll benefit from that. Let's see. Couple of successes, Salem Housing has already just did their second event over in Wallace Marine Park recently, where they brought a number of providers and did housing assessments right there in the parking lot to try to get people out. And they identified, I think it was 5 people at their last event just a couple weeks ago, that they, essentially that were able to kind of step into a shelter program and then a housing program. So we feel really grateful for that concentrated effort Salem Housing Authority has been putting in.
How was that
Wallace.
determined? How were those 5 individuals, how was that determined?
Oh, yeah, sure. Part of it is willingness and part of it is vulnerability level. And then part of it is availability of the shelter programs. Is kind of what that all kind of.
So essentially, for example, maybe someone, obviously that's willing, but maybe is disabled in a wheelchair. Versus
Wish.
someone that's,
Yeah.
is it,
There's a sweet spot in the middle and that, what you just said makes a lot of sense. Disabled and wheelchair, maybe. One of the gaps or areas where I'm not to scale at all is help for people who can't complete their activities of daily living. So if they needed help transferring from wheelchair to bed, or if they fell down, could they stand up by themselves? If not, generally, the emergency shelter programs aren't set up to help them. And so one of the things that drives me bonkers is these are some of our most vulnerable, and when you get them willing, how is there not an immediate solution for them? That just makes me crazy, but you need providers who can step in with that level of kind of skilled care, essentially. Like I need the nursing home spaces that are Medicaid driven to really increase. That's another area where we're not scaling.
speaking of providers, has there been any talks amongst not necessarily insurance providers, but like maybe Salem Health or Salem Clinic or some of these facilities where they're willing to maybe cut the cost down or like a pro bono type situation? Has that been discussed?
Well, in terms of like healthcare, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a number of free or low cost healthcare services, but I haven't seen it come in at the shelter level, like the overnight shelter space. Unless you are eligible for Medicaid and you secure a nursing home or a skilled nursing facility bed, you know, and that path exists, but not at the volume that we seem to be here.
I'm like thinking even the treatment of addiction.
Yeah.
Mental illness.
Yeah.
That would be amazing if we could get some of our local healthcare providers to jump on board and provide maybe free counseling or free detox, or I'm just
Yeah.
trying to think outside of the box.
I appreciate that, and I think I'm not the most expert at that topic. I know Salem Health does that for people who indicate and qualify. There's a certain percentage of people that can access at Salem Health and others at the other different treatment providers. But then the folks doing outreach on the street describe a gap, a population of people that aren't eligible for what's in place, that are still falling through the cracks. One of the things our Homeless Alliance has done is formed a health subcommittee that is engaging with our health partners to try to work on what are those gaps and how do we fill those gaps. There's a whole committee going on through the Homeless Alliance to address that. It's a great question, I know. Let's see. I wanted to also just give a couple of reminders. We do have, we completed a study of the homelessness services in Salem, like what is the city spending and around the effectiveness of that. And that study was completed in the winter and is available if anyone is interested. And now we're working on identifying some key performance indicators for the work that the city is doing to just be able to report carefully on here's what we're accomplishing with the investments we're making. But the city itself doesn't have funding for sheltering programs. We utilized grant money that was short-term grant money to be able to do the sheltering that we have done. And so the state has been picking up the shelter operations continually lately in our area. But we are working on clarifying key performance indicators coming out of the study that we did around the work that we do in Salem.
What are some of those KPIs?
It's gonna be interesting to see. That's under development right now. I'm not sure yet what's gonna emerge. I'd be interested in what you'd be interested in.
Well, one of my questions would be, what's the success rate? So once you get someone into a shelter, like what's the next step? Or do they go back onto the street? So what percentage of people do you help actually move forward? I don't know how you track that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
who falls up with them after they get into a shelter, they get a job or whatever. I'd also be curious to understand the trends around like the increase in homeless population.
Yep.
Looking at the last 10 years, as it continues to trend up year over year over year, and are we kind of at a place where like it's just gonna keep going up? And things we're doing aren't actually providing solutions.
Right.
I'd also be curious to understand what do we do with the X percent of people that no matter what service you provide aren't gonna take it. Because I think that population group is actually growing too.
Yeah.
And so those tough things, I mean, those are tough to deal with, but.
No, those are all three excellent questions. Success rates from shelters, I don't know if the city will grab that one because the city no longer funds the shelters. But the shelters themselves have been reporting on that, and we do have a bit of funding continuing at the Navigation Center. They just did their first annual report. And at the Navigation Center, for example, they said the average person coming into the Navigation Center had been homeless for 4 years. The average stay of the person at the Navigation Center was 4 months. And then what's the rate into, they got 50 to 50, like something like 55% into what they called a permanent destination, a positive, a housing situation that would be good for them. And they cited the national average for a program comparable would be more than 20%. So they're proud of what they feel is an impressive accomplishment given the population. So that's an example coming out of the Navigation Center. Church of the Park also has annual reports that talk about exits to positive destinations and permanent destinations from the micro shelters. They're also exceeding the national standards and doing a good job, kind of bringing people into stability. You know, you kind of stabilize and then in that safe environment, and you start working on the goals and objectives and move the person forward. So I know the shelter programs are going to be reporting on that, but trends, there was a little bit local recent decrease. If you looked at point in time count, year to year, there was a 6% drop. But there's not clarity on if that's gonna sustain. Overall, homelessness has increased nationally and in Oregon pretty significantly. But we had a local bit of a dip, but a lot of people question the quality of the data. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say. And then yeah, there are people. And it's such an individual by individual challenge, and it's a great question. That's a great question.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think we're gonna answer that one, but it's just something I'm always curious.
I'm always curious about it too, and we kind of sometimes will go at one person at a time. Like one of the things that we have that, again, is not to scale, I don't have it at the level I want it, but by name case conferencing. It's like, okay, Joe, what's going on with Joe? And you just kind of put multiple brains from multiple perspectives around what seems to be motivating, what seems to be that person's next step. How do we do it? Sometimes I'll just send different people out to the same person, different people from different organizations, in case someone's got that secret sauce that can connect with that particular human on the right day at the right time. They just might be the right person to reconnect. A lot of people have very deep-seated trauma that's been unhealed that comes out of childhood, or a lot of missteps and disappointments. And so there's a huge mistrust of anyone who appears to be in government. And so there's a real resistance, and just leave me alone. I just want to camp and be left alone, you know. And that might have worked in like the 1800s when there was still a lot of unclaimed land, but it just doesn't quite work today. So I don't quite know how to make that happen, you know. So, but they don't really trust government, so, and a private agency person can look like government, so I don't know. Sometimes we'll go in on hunt for the family, try to figure out who their family is, find the family member, reconnect the family, and sometimes that's successful. We've had some cool success stories of finding that and then people return to family. It's just kind of about trying to go specific.
Yeah.
What does this person seem to be motivated by? I don't know.
I know that, West Salem Redevelopment Advisory Board, we have a budget, and in that budget, there's a beautification. I always talk about beautification because it directly, that's the signage that we've been trying to get, is that right?
Yeah,
Is there-
capital improvement projects, fixed permanent projects, so.
So just thinking about the subject that we're talking about, is there anything that we can do as a board to contribute to something?
I think it's worth discussing. There's not really anything in the plan that speaks to a project for urban renewal would be to build a, affordable housing or a treatment center, because you have to have then the staff. You don't do maintenance, so you basically have to do something. You have to modify the plan, build it, be able to maintain it, staff it. So on that level,
Could we partner? with
Yeah, I don't know.
boards?
yeah, it's worth.
Yeah, hard to say. Throw that out.
Anyway,
Get put dumpsters.
yeah,
So the question about is you gotta have somebody physically intervene with that at some level, but the
I've been
one
working
that
on-
I've seen work is having the bed.
Yeah.
It's a big draw to our specific location where work is. They're drawn into the highly vegetated areas where they congregate. And that brings them into areas that they aren't as inclined to go to if there isn't a, I don't know how they communicate, but they know where their spots are. And then the other is just Wallace Marine seems like a case study. And population has been there for as long as I've. 94. It just somewhere around 2005, 2010.
There's one individual back there who said that he's been back there for 20 years.
When I first was learning my,
In Wallace.
yeah, when I first got my role, I had a team from Controlled Street Ministries, if you ever heard of that organization, to walk me through and do a tour, and they understood that ultimately it dates back to the 1930s and the economic decline, and people started to kind of be there, and sort of started. That's what they understood to be true.
where's it located?
No.
So I went through there and it looked like your efforts were pretty successful. I heard the dock was empty and it looked like it was accessible.
Yeah.
The ramp, and then all through there, it seemed really clean. So is it just north of Glen Creek, like where it gets more of the brush and not visible?
Yeah, if you went to the, go ahead, if you want.
Oh, just north of the softball fields,
Yeah, north.
so up to the quarry.
And get there through that back trail,
Yeah, the parking lot to the softball
Yeah.
field, there's a trail, and you can follow that trail back. Almost immediately, once you hit the brush, you'll find.
The park itself, just, I was so happy because I heard horrible things. I knew you had done a lot of effort to clean it up.
Yeah.
So I go out there and I'm driving around. I haven't got out and walked around. It's like, seems like it was pretty successful. Hopefully
We're
you do
trying,
what you can to keep it that way, but
Yeah. we're trying,
well, they've got the kiddos down there.
yeah, softball, soccer.
Yeah.
Like, we'll probably,
Yeah, that's
my
my
son,
son,
right,
right,
Yeah.
It's nice to see that.
Yeah, I'm also working on looking for grant funding because been working with the park planners, there's this ultimate vision to do some master park planning. There's been some really creative ideas, like one, person has pitched a BMX bike track in that back north of the softball complex area. We could, like you said, responsibly remove some vegetation, do the cleaning and the restoration of the land, and then develop a purpose that would bring the community and ultimately change the generational trajectory there. And so there's a longer term vision to get that done, and we're just looking for the dollars to be able to pull that off, because it would be more resources than what we have currently in the current status quo budget to get that done. But so we're in the middle of, I've been working on grant hunt for the project. We're also concerned about the environment. We can't let all of this trash get into the river. You know, that's ultimately ocean bound. There's a turtle out there that's, has been recognized as potentially endangered that might get listed as an endangered species turtle. That's not okay. So we've also got a natural habitat there to think about and pay attention to.
I feel like the trash, how big is the encounter there? How many people?
I don't know today, we did it,
Flows.
it ebbs and flows. People tell me it's a little smaller today, but I don't know how accurate that is. The last time we did a very accurate count was about 260.
Is this mostly adults or is this families or children that are staying out
Most.
maybe?
Mostly adults, occasionally children, would you say? Yeah.
Yes.
There's this perception too that we get bussed in, you know what I mean? Like, I know there's population surveys and it seems like most are Salem, Oregon based. But there's also this rumor, or I know from the hospital, when they have to treat them, they're bused to Texas or somewhere else.
Yeah.
Is that some,
I have
related
it.
to that?
I chase it down every time I hear it, like like I had a lady doing recon texting me photos, and you see this bus? It comes here and it's, and these people that are getting off look on shelter.
Do a survey, how did you find out about our camp?
I do recon every single time, and I've been unable to actually confirm buses being dropped off. I can occasionally confirm nearby cities bringing people in, and we get after them every single time that happens. We have scolding, accountable conversations anytime that we are able to affirm that another city is running someone in, because that's just not acceptable. Some people say they've seen an increase in ID and driver's licenses of people coming from out of state, and they attribute that to some of the laws in Oregon. Other people say no, the vast majority of people who are here have a long-term tie to Salem. So I don't have great data, but I always chase it down if someone's got information.
Do you, just really quickly, and then time wise, do you guys work with the Union Gospel Mission?
Absolutely,
That's awesome.
routinely. They're feeding so many people, they're sheltering so many people. They have always a bed open for men, not always for women. So I feel really grateful for the expansion underway for Smoker House, because I need more female beds, but absolutely and routinely. Yeah, they're part of police department host service provider meeting that they attend. And I'm on the phone with staff there often, and it's a common place of referral. Yeah.
I'd gone through met with Dan Clem, and he took us through a tour and he explained what this section does and then what this section does, and this is what happens when we bring someone in, and it was pretty amazing.
Isn't it amazing?
We've got a really good system now. And I think they're working on something for the women.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So
Cheering it on. They have an opportunity coming up in September. They've got a pretty large event coming up. They're going to be serving a steak meal at Riverfront Park, and they're looking for volunteers. There's a pretty, I'm spacing the name. Do you remember the name of it?
One table, I think.
I think so.
It's Saturday, October 5th, I believe. Choose that.
Yeah.
And you can register online.
through what, through the city of Salem?
No, it's gonna be through UGM,
Oh, okay.
and I'm assuming I got the link sent to me, but I'm
Put
just.
that link in the bottom, folks. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but yeah, it should say like one table.
Yeah, that's good.
Link in the bottom.
I can provide it for you if you want.
What's
I
that?
can find a link for you if you want.
Okay.
I had it.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think the study would be helpful.
Okay, copy.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments for these awesome women?
I have a quick one if it's possible.
Yep.
Now, Gretchen, you and I, we've talked about this at length before, so I'm not gonna drag you through the coals anymore.
You feel
But
free
what I
to.
will
I'd be mad if I were you.
Oh, well, and I appreciate that. Quick comment. So, this is neither here nor there, but you know, we said it ourselves, if we're the lowest rung in the United States for mental health, 50th place. I don't know why we think that upping our mental health is going to be able to help. Our mental health service is going to help with this problem. It's our least effective solution to this. We really need to figure out something else. Mental health isn't going to solve this problem, not in a timely manner. Where I was really going with this, actually, one other side note, I do want to express gratitude and appreciation for the look into retail crimes. organized retail crimes. It's been a huge issue. You can read the case studies from Walgreens over the last couple of years, like $1 million warehouses getting busted, big operations. And, when we're buying things off Amazon and then Walmart.com, I think we failed to realize that a lot of this stuff is, stolen merchandise. So yeah, every pair of underwear and deodorant, everything like that we see locked up is because it's already been stolen by like, everyone in town a couple times. Anyway, the last thing I really want to say is I went to the barber shop yesterday because I wanted to look great for this meeting. And my barber asked me if I could get him, he asked me if I could get him a cattle prod. And I was like, I don't know, I can look. It's like, why do you want a cattle prod? And more or less, he wants it to defend his shop from the homeless. This is in West Salem. I'm like, wow. He's like, I don't want to kill people. He's like, but I need to protect my shop. I was like, wow. So he's like, yeah, I don't want a baseball bat. That's too dangerous, but I think a cattle prod could work. That was a real conversation I had just very recently. The last thing I will say is the day before yesterday, there was another assault at my store and my employee got hit by a homeless guy. We had already called the cops. The cops didn't come until there was an assault. Just saying. This is how bad it is in West Salem. And I work in both Northeast Salem and West Salem. And Northeast Salem is Disneyland compared to West Salem because we're right there next to the park. We're at the front door. Just saying.
Is your employee okay?
He is okay. Yeah, he's a tough guy, but he shouldn't be in that situation.
No.
Jeremy, I'm sorry, it doesn't really feel like there's words. I hear you. Yeah,
We just keep marching on.
yeah.
Maybe Ace should sell cattle prods.
There might be a hot market for him soon. I don't know.
All right, 10% off business owners in West Salem. All right, thank you, Jeremy. Yeah. Anything else? And thank you both again for this conversation for sure. The next discussion item is advisory, latest from West Salem Heritage Response organizations. Our next West Salem Business Association general meeting is September 26th at Roth's upstairs, and Stockfield and Briggs will be joining us. By ladies and gentlemen. And the speakers will be speaking to combating fraud, corporate transparency, act and fund transfer risks. And then Garrett will be speaking to avoiding employee liability. So it'll be a good conversation for business owners. So hopefully we can ramp up our attendance. So if you guys do plan to attend, if you could invite someone that would benefit maybe, that would be amazing. That's all I have. Anyone else? Right? Okay.
Go to the Leon Association.
Yeah, you're the new guy. You're the new person on the board has to go to the new association.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, it's only a 4-hour daily hour.
At that time.
6 to 10. Just kidding. What else do we have for
Topics.
that meeting topic? Any ideas that you guys want to speak to or have someone speak to?
So I know the group wanted to have full county elected official, so they weren't able to make it this month, so they'll be attending this one. So if you want to have anything tied to like policy maker discussion, that fits that.
I had a concept
Okay.
that I'm sure will get shot down for 1,000 reasons, but there any way to put a guardrail along the sidewalk where the bridge discharges outfalls and prevent people from going straight across. It's that.
When you're coming
It's hazardous as all get out, right by top of over here.
Gotcha.
Discharge and
Balls.
trying to go off in seconds.
You're talking about the old, where the crosswalk was,
Yeah.
from second.
And try to
There's an
disperse
opening
them
right there.
to the crosswalk.
Yeah.
Let's say that.
I mean, is there a city ordinance that prevents that from?
I mean, we have things in downtown for the same reason where you shut off.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a cross there, so it's, I mean, you could still put something up to say, I'm crossing. And we are looking at, as one of the projects we'll talk about, go out, this connection of the, but it depends on where they're trying to go. If they're trying to get to the west side, that's the quickest shot if they're coming off that path. So even if we do have these other options, the hope is they take that road. But I think it's a good point to maybe have something that's safe.
I would say once a
No
week,
crossing.
get or a bicyclist
Oh, is that right?
go shooting straight across, and these guys aren't prepared.
Someone's gonna get tagged, yeah.
And man,
It's that guy with the dog.
lots of, there's just a lot of, and that's 4 lanes of traffic, and that sucker is voluminous.
And it's mostly those shooting across from the east to the west, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Well,
We gotta look at the next.
if Second Street becomes more of a thoroughfare though as well, what's the possibilities of that just becoming another intersection with a light
It's not,
and is not?
no, because, yeah, we looked at this, we studied it.
Okay,
At the time, we were looking at undercrossing walls, but it wasn't connecting more unless you extend them to drive.
gotcha.
It was expensive.
Yeah.
It was 30 million just to do the crossing.
Yeah.
It was ridiculously
Okay.
expensive. And yeah, as far as, even, because, when ODOT was doing work out there, they had a temporary flashing beacon. So the fear was, people, the community get used to this, it's easy crossing, you have the flashing. But peak hours, one, is not safe because people are gone on that corner. You have double lane, right turn, no stop,
Yeah.
trying to make the light, you're just flying through and there's the hump, so there's a vision clearance issue. Just not safe. I think it's a good idea to have something there to say, no crossing safe or something.
Absolutely.
To prevent people.
I think even if it was only 100 foot long.
Yeah.
Be enough to prevent that natural shot.
Yeah.
They disperse, maybe they'll get down. That's big maybe, but that light hardly gets used for pedestrians. It's really bicep.
Well, for like me personally, coming to work, I'll usually turn where the Dutch Brothers is. And that also, I mean, if it was extended, it might be better, but like, you know, there's sometimes people crossing there and you've got somebody in the middle waiting for the cars because they've already made it halfway, right? So you're gonna get in the turn lane, but like the other last Thursday, I think there was a guy standing in the turn lane. I'm like, like screw it around, you know, but then if they have a bike or a trailer on the bike, then they're that much longer and they're sitting in there.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, you're watching traffic, then somebody's crossing from that's to go over across the street there, plus you've got the cars waiting to come out. Like 3 or 4 pedestrians or even 2 pedestrians, and I'm like, oh gosh, like somebody's gonna get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really wish I would write in, write out. The parts, start. Or some play to get out as well, is that
That connection is
turn to go.
Before the-
South Carolina, us is just,
Hector.
Unless all that turn.
We're talking about that one?
Right in, right out, yeah, I can see how that'd be. I mean, they did it with Walgreens,
yeah, precisely. Yeah, and it's not that difficult, so that's the infuriating piece, is it. Not that hard to go over a half a block and grab that line.
Yeah,
might have
it's
those
fine too.
businesses that would be, anytime that we talk about something tied to traffic calming or they're so. They get pretty irritated about it, so it's worth a conversation. Yeah, both all those groups that talk about. For sure, they like their access, so if all of a sudden you say we're gonna cut it back for right in, right out. We can have a conversation, it's been a while since we talked about it, on the topic too, crossing right there with the flashing beacon on the light signal. I mean, when you experience the backup come peak hours, it's staggered, so if you have more intersections, you'll just back it up. And so it's just, yeah, we looked at all these different things, they're either expensive.
I didn't think I was the first one with that.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Even overcrossing, we looked at different overcrossings and people just don't use them. And so then you build a structure to go as a sightly animal. Yeah, or it could become shelter. People don't use that, okay, yeah, yeah.
The dumb animals. But No, the one thing that I've noticed living in multiple is the cross access easement. That a lot of jurisdictions require that Salem does not. It is brutal when you get your Lancasters, Schultz, and Wallace. So you go to Bedford, everything's covered. Lights, you got cross access easement. And therefore we don't have the shock effect of the egress. Yeah, bought house. That is tempered
No, that's
shotgunning across.
if that were a new development, it'd be required. Yeah, it was just so, then it's when they have it to go back
So
and
it's
say,
like
okay,
grandfathered.
retroactively, we're gonna cut this back to. My understanding, my previous experience with talking about changes over there was resistance, maybe it'd be different now, but it's worth.
Yeah, it's a tough, it's probably good 6 hours. Day of time. But to take that risk a little bit on,
Yeah.
you speed up if you got open lanes in there. But man, I think getting hours, that is, you got Dutch Brothers at that, urging in that line,
You know,
suicide
when they
lane.
expanded Wallace to 2 lanes, I'm surprised that was done. I mean, just,
I have always done two, it's both ways. What history, in my history, it's always been,
I remember when they bought, when this one thing, they bought half of our one bed. They forgot to connect their sewer line to.
really.
Yeah, side topic.
So,
All right,
Thanks for-
Jeremy,
Well,
hi.
I have a question before we move on, because I do wanna like get better on the guardrail or something, like, what's the next step? I actually think that's a good idea.
I can, so I'll bring it up to traffic, and see if there's something that we can do to put something. I don't know what the length could be, but I think yes, I think it's a good idea. With Second Street now open, it's being used, there's, that people know there's a sidewalk across the street, so I don't want that to be a bigger issue.
Yeah.
So if you've seen the uptick, it's probably tied to that, so, yeah. it's a good press.
Very nice. Anything for the good of the group? Jeremy, anything? Okay, perfect. We're adjourned.